Politics, where politics always rocks. You've just been rocked by Rockin' Politics.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to Rockin' Politics. I'm your host, Hillary Raimo. Joining me today is Danielle Keane. Danielle grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida, went to school at Florida State University, where she received her bachelor's degree in political science and sociology. As an undergraduate, she gained political experience by working on political campaigns and served as vice president to her university's Numbered Labels chapter, a nonprofit organization that encourages political discourse between political parties. She is also the policy director for NORML. She tracks all local, state, and federal pending legislation related to the legalization of marijuana. She researches and drafts legislative alerts for NORML supporters and colleagues promote NORML outreach efforts on the webpage and social media, including blogging. And she's responsible for managing the NORML PAC, to the PAC, or Political Action Committee. We're going to find out more about what that means. Today we're talking about the legalization of marijuana, probably one of the biggest acts in the history of the United States since it was illegal to consume alcohol. Everybody can relate to this topic somehow. Everybody has an opinion. Today we're going to talk to Danielle about her role at NORML, more about her role at NORML, and some of the things that are pertinent today that we need to better understand, and also with the candidates in the upcoming election in November, what that means for each of us, where we stand, and what we can look forward to happening no matter what we think about the topic of legalizing marijuana. Thanks, Danielle, for being here so much. This is a really important topic, and I'm really excited to discuss this for myself as well as our listeners. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how did you get started working into this big movement? What was it about yourself? If you want to share a little personal, insight into that for everybody listening, how did this become important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was a student in college, undergraduate, I was studying political science and sociology, like you mentioned, and I was enjoying what I was learning, but it was really theoretical, and it wasn't really relevant to anything in my day-to-day life. And obviously, I was trying to really gain some skills while I got my undergraduate degree, and so I could market myself later on. And so I really wanted to take what I was learning and apply it to a policy that I felt passionate about. So I did some soul searching at the time, and it just so happened that I was responsibly consuming marijuana, and I had a lot of friends that were doing the same thing. But unfortunately, I also had a lot of friends that were experiencing the pains of the drug war. They were getting arrested and were being faced with having a record despite being really good, responsible people. And so it was at that time that I kind of focused on marijuana law reform and decided to really just stay on that plan as I finished my studies. So that was when I reached out to NORML, and I came up to Washington, D.C. for a summer and did an internship with them. And that was what really just solidified my interest in helping to reform these laws.
Yeah, because this is a Schedule I drug. When we talk about marijuana, we're talking about the punishment for being caught with marijuana, it puts you into jail for a very long time. I mean, it just seems like the punishment for consuming a plant medicine, which some indigenous cultures and other cultures around the world don't consider it this kind of Schedule I drug like the United States does, really has some harsh punishments that come along with it. So for you to step up to the plate to advocate for the better understanding and better education of, what marijuana is, what cannabis is, and the healing properties that this plant really does have, I give you a lot of credit for, because it's people like you who are going to push this movement over the edge onto the other side, where people are going to start realizing that there has been some really significant scientific studies done on this plant where it shows incredible healing properties, not only for the human body, but for the human mind as well. There's some people who can be treated with PTSD. It has very positive outcomes. Some people can use it for pain treatment during cancer routines, or even for cancer itself. It has shown that it has effects, positive effects on very significant diseases that humans have. And, we're all dealing with the same thing, and this is something that we can all learn how to grow, that we can be very responsible with. So I commend your efforts. Who would you like to acknowledge in the effort of legalizing marijuana from a political standpoint?
That's a good question. I have to admit that I'm pretty new to the movement. NORML was founded back in 1970, so there have been a number of elected officials and advocates and just plain old people that have worked tirelessly since then to really bring this issue to the forefront. So I guess my first shout-out would have to be to Keith Stropp, who is the gentleman who founded NORML back in 1970, and he still actually serves as in-house legal counsel for NORML, and he's in the office every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so it's pretty admirable to see the pioneers of marijuana law reform are still really dedicated to this cause. Additionally, there are definitely a number of congressmen and women that have taken this issue on and have really tried to bring as much attention to it as possible. Congressman Earl Blumenauer from Oregon, Senators Cory Booker, Gillibrand, and Rand Paul, are all three of those sponsored the CARES Act, which maybe we'll get into a little bit later, but it's probably the most comprehensive piece of federal legislation related to marijuana. I could go on forever highlighting people that have done great work in the arena, but I'll leave it at that for now.
That's great. Thank you. People listening can go to the website NORML, NORML.org. You can find a lot of really interesting and good sourced information on the website. You can keep up to date on the legislation that's going through. We have a number of states that are trying to legalize the adult use of recreational marijuana through ballot initiatives this year, which includes California, Arizona, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Nevada. They're all in the midst of collecting the required number of signatures in their respective states in order to make the ballot in November, this coming November. Additionally, the Vermont legislature is considering a bill to legalize and regulate the adult use of marijuana right now. And if the House approves the measure, they could be the first state to legalize marijuana through the legislature rather than through ballot initiative. This is important for a number of reasons. For a summary of all that currently pending pieces of legislation related to cannabis, you can go to the website and you can read up on it. You can educate yourself and follow it. Then you can send a box of rocks to your favorite politician on sendrocksnow.com, and you can reward them for their behavior and let them know what you're thinking. So, Danielle, let's talk about the CARES Act. Let's get right into it. What is it? Why does it matter?
Yes, good question. So the CARES Act stands for the Compassionate Access, Research Expansion, and Respect States Act of 2015. It's pending in both the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives, and it's very extensive. It would, if passed, it would strengthen protections for states that have medical marijuana laws on the books already. It would reschedule marijuana under the Controlled Substances Act, and it would remove CBD, which is short for cannabidiol, altogether from the Controlled Substances Act. It would also allow financial institutions and banks to do business with legal marijuana-related businesses, and it would permit VA physicians to authorize medical marijuana use, which they're currently not allowed to do. It does a couple more things. It also makes it easier to conduct research on marijuana. And so it's by far probably the most comprehensive piece of marijuana-related legislation that is currently pending.
And if people are listening and they want to get involved and they want to voice their opinion, how do you suggest they do that?
Well, luckily, NORML has made it pretty easy for people to voice their opinions to their elected officials. People can go to our website, norml.org/act, and that's where we keep the summaries of all pending legislation. And so you'll go there and you can see at the very top we have an alert for the CARES Act. and we have already a pre-written letter that you can edit to make it personalized or not, and all you have to do is put your zip code in, a couple other pieces of information, and we'll send those letters off to your elected officials. Also, the CARES Act is unfortunately stuck right now in the Judiciary Committee, it's chaired by Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa, who has been quite an opponent to marijuana reforms, and yet he's probably the most powerful person as chair of that Judiciary Committee, because almost all marijuana-related legislation will need to pass that. And so we also have an alert specific to Senator Chuck Grassley that urges him specifically to move on the CARES Act. So if you're from Iowa, please visit our website and use our tools to contact your senator.
And if you live in Iowa, please do that. And if you also would like to send them a box of rocks to tell Mr. Grassley how we feel about his opponent against the legalization of marijuana, you can certainly do that as well. What I love about this is it's giving people options. So your service at normal.org/act gives people options as to how to voice their opinions and make their voices heard. And I really think this is where we're heading. Now, in the upcoming election, Danielle, would you mind speaking about how the candidates that are running for presidency, do you have any insight on their personal, because they don't talk about this on the news. It's not like Hillary and Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are necessarily standing up talking about the legalization of marijuana, but we're all wondering where they stand. Could you give us a little insight into the candidates and where they're standing on this topic?
Of course. So while the presidential candidates maybe haven't spoken too much on the topic, they've definitely been asked questions related to medical marijuana and marijuana legalization this year more than they ever have in history, which is a good thing. Since Marco Rubio and Chris Christie have left the presidential race, a lot of marijuana advocates around the country are relieved, simply because those were the only two presidential candidates that really came out strongly against marijuana legalization, and they promised to walk back what President Obama has done, and they would not let states that have chosen to legalize marijuana move forward with those laws, whereas currently President Obama has largely had a hands-off approach and has let states go ahead with their own decisions. So of the remaining presidential candidates, most of them have about the same position, which is states' rights. They support states' abilities to pass these laws and to move forward with them as they see fit. Bernie Sanders has probably been the most outspoken and progressive on this issue. He has said that if he were faced personally with the decision to vote for full legalization or not, he said that he would probably vote for it. And additionally, he did introduce a very progressive piece of legislation in Congress called the Ending Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act of 2015, which would deschedule marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, similar to alcohol and tobacco, and it would also provide states the power to establish their own marijuana policies.
Now, who do you plan on voting for, if you don't mind me asking? I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit to see where you headed towards as far as choosing a candidate goes.
Not at all. I am definitely feeling the burn personally, so I have voted for Bernie Sanders.
Yes. I've actually heard that a lot. Believe it or not, I've been watching it all play out on mainstream media, and one of the reasons why we do this show is to offer that alternative view that you don't see on CNN or the nightly news, because a lot of people just don't get access to it for whatever reason. So thank you very much for being here, for sharing this information, telling us what's going on, updating us on some of the things, the CARE Act, and for letting us know where we can go to find out more. In closing, do you have kind of a vision or a personal statement that, if you had one message you could get out to listeners, what would it be?
One message, I'll keep it simple. If you're passionate about a policy change, whether it's marijuana or not, pick one out and just really be an advocate for it. That's the only way that real change happens, and we definitely need more advocates out there for every cause.
Well, speaking of advocacy, you have an upcoming 2016 Congressional Lobby Day. Tell us all about that and how we can get involved.
Yes, absolutely. So we do have normal. It will basically be a 2-day event. The first day will be an informational conference with moderated discussions between some of the most influential thought leaders in the movement. And then on that second day, we will all gather again on Capitol Hill to actually lobby our elected officials on a couple of pending marijuana-related bills. So if you're interested, check the event out on our website and join us.
And make your voice Normal.org. It's very, very important. Danielle Keane from Normal.org, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. You're listening to Rocking Politics, folks. I'm your host, Hillary Raimo.